I want to talk with you a little bit about social media. Now, the number one problem, my own opinion, that we have as an organization in order to maintain our survivability is we have to overcome the deficit in communication. And I don't mean that we don't communicate. We can chat, we can talk, we can visit, we can call, we can do all the normal things. But we don't do it in a timely, interactive, and responsive way, both up and down. We're not listening and we're not sharing. We're not listening and sharing as many of the more viable organizations do. In my former life, I was a school superintendent for 48 some odd years. Teach at the university. I teach online classes to graduate students. I use interactive video conferencing to conduct a lot of my classes, interviews. So I've been immersed into media and internet because of necessity. I also worked as a consultant with a very large organization. We worked 10 years with Union Pacific Foundation providing leadership training to principals all along the UP track. So I did a lot of traveling. And I was a road warrior, and so I spent a lot of time learning how to stay in touch with clients and those people who sent me out in the field. And I couldn't wait to do it by mail. I couldn't do it by fax. I couldn't do it by some of the traditional methods that I had grown up with. So we had to kind of move forward into a generation, into an environment that really changed our way of looking at things. My digital experience, and I was telling some fellows at lunch, my digital experience began in 1974 when I was a young administrator in the Dallas school system. Dallas at that time was a premier school district, probably is today, but we were using computers and reporting and data collection. Remember the bubble cards, the card readers and stuff? We did everything that way. The thing was, we were digitizing and putting everything in data format so we could access it, utilize it, and make changes and deal with our clients, our students, and our teachers. Then I moved to Region 13, an educational service center in Austin, Texas, an intermediate. And we were using computers and information and email. Email was just becoming prevalent about that time. I mean, there was some email going along, but I was dealing with 60 component superintendents, and their idea of email was, yeah, send me that because my secretary will open it up. They didn't want to deal with email. They didn't want to deal with anything that didn't come in a hard copy. I don't see a hard copy, I'm not interested in it. So I had to make a decision at that time, and it was a radical decision. It caused me a little pain, not too much, but it was a decision. If you want the information, it's going to be digital, and if you don't know how to do it, you better learn. And so we kind of moved the superintendents into that format. We went through some of the more commercial types of email, corporate level kinds of stuff like GroupWise, and it was a Nobel product and what have you. Then I moved to Odessa, Texas, home of Friday Night Lights, and we had to struggle with internet and communications there. I had two completely different data systems, one dealing with educational environments, the other dealing with business, and the two didn't want to talk. So I had to make decisions saying we're either going to be together in this enterprise or we're not. So the reason I'm telling you all this is because the evolution and the acceptance of the internet, as we now call it, has not been an easy journey for many of us in this room. And some of us really struggle to understand it, to grasp it, to deal with it. And what's really pushing us to the point of having to deal with this concept of internet is we've gone from dial-up, if you remember the dial-up, reading and all that little kind of stuff, tweeting, and you'd wait for hours just for one little paragraph to come through. So we moved from that kind of an environment to now that you're complaining if you don't have 25 gigabytes at one time. And 1,000, at least one gigabyte up, 25 down. I mean, I don't have all day to deal with this. And if you do business like I do out of your home and you rely on the internet and communications, telephone is something that gets in your way. You want data, you want information, you want exchange. And then you learn there's something called spam. And if you don't check your spam account once in a while, you'll find out that, oh, that Jeff Butcher sent me an email 6 weeks ago. Why did it wind up in spam? So we have to deal with these little funky kinds of things, which makes our life quite interesting and almost novel at times because we have information coming at us from all directions. I know some of you, your phones were going off periodically today. Those are called, not telephones, those are called smart devices. And the reason they're called smart devices is because they tend to be smarter than we are on how to turn them off and on. I sing in the choir on Sunday, and it's interesting when one of the phones goes off, that all the choir members are trying to get under their ropes and figure out whose phone is going off, especially if you have similar rings. And then I was recently in Ireland. I went on a trip. My wife and I took a trip to Ireland last month. The first day in Ireland, I left my iPhone 6 in the cab. Of course, it was returned. No, it wasn't. And so I lived about 3 weeks without a cell phone. That's worse than that was an awful feeling. Knowing that there were people that wanted to send me stuff and get stuff, and I didn't have a way to do it. So having said all that, the issue is, so why do we want to use this thing called social media? Jeff handed out this little pamphlet, and the pamphlet is for millennials. You know, we talked about last year, Jeff and Jackson, about being relevant, okay? And I shared this with the Diocesan Convention in Texas, the Texas Assembly. I said, so how's your recruiting going? How's the membership expansion going? No, it's not. It's actually going south. And the reason is we can't even recruit our own age group. We have a hard time in expanding the Brotherhood among our own age group. Think about that. In your own parishes. In our parish, we have probably 65 men on our rolls. 15 of them are the members of the Brotherhood, or the rest of them. So we have trouble with our own age group, and then we get confounded and confused when we start dealing with people under 37 years of age, called millennials. And millennials have a different work ethic. If you haven't had a chance to read this, read it. It's because as I read it, all 3 of my daughters are in here. They're all millennials. In fact, one of them is 37 years old. She's director of hospital services in New York City for one of the organ donor group there that works with hospital services. And she was complaining about millennials the other day. I said, wait a minute, let me get this right. You're a millennial and you're complaining about millennials. Yeah, but the point is they work, think, and act differently. But one of the nice things that we need to recognize is millennials work 24/7. They don't work 8-hour days. They rest, they eat, they do things, they dress for the entire day. All of this is so true. Okay, enough of that. But we've got to be relevant to this group if we're going to do any kind of expansion and growth and responsiveness to their needs. If we're not going to use the communication devices and tools that they use. So why should we use social media? By the way, let me ask you a question. When did social media begin? Anybody have an idea? Anybody remember? 1969, I'll tell you the answer. 1969. Remember CompuServe? That was the first commercial provider. Then Prodigy, and then on and on. So we've been migrating all along. You've been around social media, involved in it, But you've been kind of in deniability. I guess you've been denying it at some point. Because we have moved from social media until now we have over 100 different social media platforms. Now, I've made some inroads personally as a volunteer to try to move us into social media. We do have a Facebook page. We do have a Twitter account. We have a blog. And we're probably going to get Instagram and Pinterest and maybe LinkedIn too. And in fact, I will tell you, one of the diocesan chapters that has a really robust and accurate website, and that's a static kind of Generation 1 type of social media, and that's the Dallas Assembly. I applaud them because they do a marvelous job of keeping it up to date and sharing information, and it's something you can go to and you get great kinds of understanding of where they are and how they're working. So kudos to that group, and there's others, and I know, and I just haven't had a chance to look at them as much. But we've got to expand our efforts into this social media. There are a lot of reasons why we shouldn't use social media. First of all, a lot of us think it's a fad and it's going to go away. Hang on to that thought. The other is that we had the question from some of my bean counter friends is, what's the return on investment? I don't see it. Okay, that's a good one, because there is a return on investment, but it takes us a little bit to understand it. Another one that's most troubling to us is that we know that people say bad things about us, or they'll write bad things on our site. So we're worried about all those people knowing what we think we are or something. I don't know what it is. And then the other one that we have to overcome ourselves is that our supporters don't use social media. Like those superintendents don't like using email. So we're going to have to say that dog's not going to hunt, using a good southern term. So if you still think it's a fad, which it's not, keep in mind that the platforms are continuing to change. And the most challenging thing I have as someone who deals somewhat into social media and the internet is that it's hard to stay on top of all of the updates. The one thing that I hate to see is my computer to pop up and says, you need to update such and such file. I don't want it to, because I've got to stop, take time, let it do, and then sooner or later it's going to tell me something like, you're going to have to change your password. Oh my God, passwords. Have you ever tried to manage your passwords? How many of you write them down in your book? Okay. And so all we have to do is find out where your book is and we're done. Right? Well, I have something better than that. There's an app that's called Splash ID, which is supposed to be secure. It does one little thing. If you enter 3 incorrect passwords into to get the account, it dissolves the data. That's worse than losing your book, I can tell you. So social media is about engagement, connection. It drives traffic to our sites. It has shareable content. If we do it right, it's shareable content. It means more exposure. It means that we're extending our marketing tools. We're extending our PR research. Social media is messaging, and our brand and product, especially men's ministries. Because most people do not know about men's ministry. If you ask a millennial, who are the Brotherhood, tell me what they do, they have no idea. Because they look for something that's robust, giving them information, and they want to see integrity. Someone in one of our previous services said that we've got to do more than pray. When we would step out the doors, we've got to walk the talk. Right. That's what social media is about. Because if you're a phony, if you're a hypocrite, if you are anything but genuine, they will find you. As people were talking in this room, I was Googling them and using DuckDuckGo or one of those other search engines to find out who this person was. Background. You're on the internet, folks. You're there. So you need to understand, whether you want to or not, you're part of the internet environment. In fact, all of this talk governmentally about internet invading, Google has been doing this forever. And all the other AT&T, you just line them up. So the information is there. What we've got to do is understand what it's used and what you can do to maybe protect your own environment and so forth, which is it's not real scary stuff. You just need to be informed and understand it. So what is social media? It's any online technology or practice that people use to share in real time. And millennials are all about sharing. They share with each other. By the way, what hour, I think this hour, it says what hour the millennials are on the online most often is between 9 and 10 at night. Between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Think about it when you walk around and see your grandkids. By the way, I live about 800 miles from my only grandson. So how do we communicate with our grandson, and how does he know who Yaya and Grandma is? FaceTime. I mean, we do FaceTime. It's like the dog barking, Hudson, my grandson's doing all these. FaceTime is allowed us to be a grandparent in a way that was we didn't even think about years ago. It's really kind of interesting. Social media has revolutionized the way we communicate with each other and other personnel on a personal and professional level. Social media has completely changed our expectation of brands, companies, and nonprofits. If you want to know about any organization, what they do, how they behave, you will find it on the internet. You can find that information. And here's the thing that's important, is that most millennials will not use just one source to make their decisions. They're looking at several sources and providers, and where did that information come from? They're much more astute than we are, say, when we deal with cable TV or any kind of thing like that, or newspapers. They're much more skeptical of that. I gotta say that right. Suspicious is a good way to say it. They're much more suspicious about the source of information than we are. Now, we tend to be cynical, but they're suspicious. They know that not everything on the internet is gospel or truth. So they're understanding that. So what social media tools are good for us? Currently, we're using Facebook. We have a Twitter account. We're trying to get LinkedIn and interest. And as I said earlier, we're going to be looking at Tumblr and also YouTube posts. All of these are important, but there is something that we need to understand about social media. It's not a voluntary effort. And Father Kranz will tell you that when you put together something on the internet, Jack will tell you as well, it takes a lot of time, and it takes more than just part-time kind of deal. What I'm telling you is that we, need to move into that environment quickly, robustly, and actively. And the second thing is we need to make sure that, my own opinion, Jeff, is that we look at it from a what do we want it to do for us point of view, and how do we manage it? Because you can't just say, well, let's use social media. Okay, go forth and use it. It's much more difficult than that. We need, my opinion again, based upon the research, is we have to have a policy about our media and how we're going to use it. We have to have a policy, written policy, about how we want to use it in the world, what do we want it to do for us, and how do we want it to communicate. And the most important thing is that we have to put resources and operational guidance on how it's going to happen. It cannot happen part-time. And what I have found is that if you're a nonprofit and not in social media, you're behind already. If you're a nonprofit and you're using social media and trying to do it with a voluntary group, you're getting behind quickly. If you're a nonprofit and want to use social media to expand your brand, to promote your product, to show and demonstrate what you're about, and the good things that we do for men in our country, you need to put resources to it. And you need to have someone that's going to to deal with it. And I'd like to share with you something that I ran across just recently about Facebook. Some of you deal with Facebook, and I looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so telling. And this is a breakdown. I'm going to give you just some quick figures. A breakdown of Facebook users by age and gender. And so when I give you the numbers, you can kind of figure that 50-50 in terms of gender, unless I see something different. Facebook users right now, 13 to 17, there are 14.5 million users. 6.6 are male, million. 18 to 25, there's 50 million plus users on Facebook. 50 million plus. 18 to 25.
This is U.S.
20 U.S. Well, I shouldn't say U.S. This is Facebook, just in general, users. 23 million of those are men. 26 to 34 years of age, that's a millennial group. There are 29 million in that. So under 34, you're looking at over 100 million people using the internet. Facebook. They're on it. They're looking at it. They're sharing information. And there's kinds of mechanisms on how you do it and how you shouldn't do it. It's not like writing on a wall, as you've seen that commercial. It's much more complex than that. When you get down to our age group, 55 and above, there are 10 million of us using it compared to that. So those numbers tell me that we either shift the way we do business in terms of communicating, in communications, listening, because one of the things about the internet that I think is so interesting is that if we do it properly, we're not just using the internet, we're collecting data about who's using it, what they're sending us, what they're saying about us, how do we respond to it. We treat them as clients who are potential members, everyone. And even if they use the internet, the Facebooks and the social media, they're directed to, say, our website. We have a donation page on that website. If we're saying, if we're sharing with them what we're doing in terms of ministries, they will be inclined to donate. We don't care if they're a member or not at that point. When they donate, they donate. But we'd like to be able to collect data and use it for improving our position, improving our marketing, improving and expanding our brand so that it becomes viable, more viable than what we're experiencing today. It's just that important. Nonprofits use social media to engage their communities. Engage their community. That means they're sharing information. Email and websites still rule, but that's Web 1.0. Social media tools are more about engagement with communities. That's 2.0, or the social web. And that term emerged in 2004, just FYI. Now we're into 3.0, and guess what 3.0 is? 3.0 is this. Tablets, smartphones, those kinds of devices. So 3.0, because I know that this is a criticism we have of our children and grandchildren, and that is they don't know how to walk with their head up, because they're all walking with their head on their cell phone, or they're going, the first thing they do when they sit down in a restaurant is do what? They got their cell phone going. And I used to complain about kids until I started seeing their parents doing the same thing. Okay, so it is what it is. We just need to know how to capture that energy, capture that attraction that the social media has, and use it to our benefit. Social media is user-generated content. Okay, now let me stop here for just a second, Jeff. User-generated content. Now, I try to keep Facebook, some things on it. By the way, we have 163 friends. I hope all of you are. I think 163 is better than 0. But we should have more than that. So I've got to work with our group on how we can get that out. In Facebook, you have to be a member, so that's one of the sloppy things about it. You can't just find it. Google will put a URL in your browser and it'll pop up. We also have a blog that encourages people to share ideas and information, which we protect because I think even Jack said you can't. You put something on there, you can't see it. Well, it's because it has to be approved, Jack. What you put on there, no, it's good. So we tried it. We're trying to do this social media in a logical, methodical, calculating way. But we need to have everybody in the boat, or we're not in the boat. So this social media is going to have to be our way of sharing information. But let me get back to the user-generated content. What I'm saying is, without you sharing with us, with each other, information, we can't put anything on it. It's vaporware. It doesn't exist. So I need pictures, I need stories, I need little tidbits. Even if I could just put it in 140 characters in Twitter, I can put a tiny URL in there and drive that Twitter account to that site. You click on it, you're there. Twitter is such a powerful tool. I used to watch some TV programs in the morning that would cause my blood to boil. You have too, I'm sure. And I was on Twitter, as soon as they would pop up, I'm banging away, sending them a tweet telling them what I think. That's the way the world is today. The last presidential debates, people were on Twitter and they could monitor the number of tweets that were going up and down based upon what was going on the stage. It's that responsive, but it's content driven and we have to generate the content. Now you can't this is not one of those things that we can just pass the football off or kick the can down the road. We're either going to be together and make this happen, or we need to just give it up. It's as simple as that, because we can't do it. A nonprofit has to do it in a way that's going to grow their organization. And when I teach leadership courses, I always tell people that as a business environment, if you're not growing, you're going backwards. If you're not improving, you're going backwards. In an organization like our own, if we're going backwards in business is called bankruptcy, and out of business, and ours it becomes what? Extinction. Right. And that's just a simple fact. I mean, that's something we cannot deny. So it's very important for nonprofits, because nonprofits are using this in ways that are just unbelievable. They learn what their supporters are saying about them and what they're sharing. They know how to drive the traffic to certain sites, like donation sites, if you will. In fact, there's some sites that will specialize in fundraising for you, group fundraising, and PayPal will be the payee, and they handle it all. We're setting up a nonprofit in Lincoln County, New Mexico, for homeless teenagers. Homeless teenagers is a big problem in a lot of areas, and we are trying to do that. And we were trying to come up with ways to get some funds to open this up, and that was one of the ways that we were directed to go. So and I guess the short, if you really want to test where this is going, just start looking at all of the nonprofits and see how they use social media. I mean, everyone is using it. Amnesty International, AARP, does that sound familiar? St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Human Rights Watch, Save the Children, American Red Cross, they're all doing it. And the question I ask myself is, where are we? And then the next question is, why not? So reason one that we need to do it because that we're not doing well is because we don't invest enough time and resources and energy into it. Simply said, it won't get done the way we're going about it, and it won't give us the desired impact. We can't be afraid of social media. If you're concerned about sharing information, it could put people you serve in an awkward situation. we need to look at how we do it. So shift the focus to something else. The other reason is we forget that social media is a conversation, not a lecture. You ask a question, you can ask questions, you can create polls, you can respond to comments, you can thank people for sharing the information. I guess I'm glad I'm not being evaluated on this, but I think we're at a point as a group that we need to have a coming of age, if you will, and understanding how we use this. Because I think it's one of the legacies that I have personally want to do is I want to be able to pass the Brotherhood of St. Andrew to my son-in-law and to my grandson. I wanted to be there to help them and to be an important ministry for them. Pat,
recently, our diocese gave away two $2,000 scholarship to potential high schoolers in our of course, parishes, church, our diocese, in other words, in our churches. Awarded 2 scholarships, and that would be something good to pass along to you to share on the website. What's a good way to get it to you? Only thing that comes to mind is by way of email.
well, right now, that's the way we would do it. But before you say, and this is what I'm trying to say to you, this is not a Roy Benavides program. This is not me doing this job. I'm a volunteer. I'm trying to help put it together. This has got to be, and you're raising the question, I'm answering it, this has got to be the Brotherhood of St. Andrew national emphasis. This has got to be a national office issue to make it happen. Bottom line.
So we can just funnel everything that way.
But you can either most likely you can either put it on the site yourself and link it to a Twitter account or Twitter account, or you can send it as an attachment, and we'll do it that way. This morning we had Eucharist with the bishop. It's on the Facebook page.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
So the pictures went upstairs, put it on. I can do that, and it can be done. It's not rocket science, really. It's a matter of having the time and energy of the staff to do it. But it's got to be much more directed. Right now, I'm struggling to get kinds of information. I know that we've had this issue, a problem in other issues, James, because, Bob, I'm sorry.
That's right, I'll answer the both.
But we've had this other issue trying to get something even for our other publications. I talked to Jim Goodson. Jim is looking for information. So we cannot create it in our mind. It has to be heard from you. Question?
I use the emails for most of the contacts in my Province 3. And I get some comments from some persons, and they say, I don't want to be exposed to having my email address being exposed to a lot of people. And I'm just wondering, do we have a setup for the new users that we can just ask a tidbit question on how to get around some of these little situations that we face as we use the internet for communication? That's one of my questions. And the other question is the national website, our website, when will it become user-friendly so that we can go into the site for our area, whether it's a diocese coordinator or whether it's the provincial president, and actually give information about the program. We have some fantastic programs that go on all across the country, I know in our province, but we cannot communicate this information to the other chapters that are right across from us. So when can we expect that we can have an updated website so we can go in and put in what activities we're going to have and get this information to some of the people, members in our area?
You're going to have members that are going to completely resist it and have those kinds of cautions and so forth. We cannot create something nationally or any kind of program that's going to circumvent that. That's just a one-on-one kind of thing, and sooner or later, the 10,000 versus 100,000 is going to kick in. It's just a reality. What I'm trying to say, Jeff, is that the 10,000 will slowly move to the end of the table, and the others are moving up to replace this. That's just a natural process. I can't make that any clearer. But it's a struggle with any kind of our biggest provincial president issue is communicating with each other. Whether we use a GoToMeeting format, Adobe Connect, video conferencing, whatever it is, we have a hard time even just scheduling a finance committee meeting. We're working against some other issues that it'll take time. Well, let me get to the internet, to the website. We have a user-friendly site now. I think it's pretty user-friendly. It's brand new. It's robust. It's got capabilities. To put the content on there is another issue. That has to be done, and there's some mechanisms that we have in place. People who manage the site, Father Krantz is one, I think Bob is another, a couple, there are three, Jack is another. We have to filter some things, not because we're trying to eliminate content, we want to share it, but we have to do that because there are other people besides you that are trying to put stuff on there. Our blog page, Jack and I have had kind of communications. Our blog page, which is called a Discipline of Study, Service, and prayer. I'm beginning, oops, is that an oops on? Sorry. But it's, so I'm on the, oh, that's bad. Anyway, it's we do have controls on that so that we can kind of monitor the content. The best way to do it is if you're going to send something, you need to call some of us, or send us an email with this an attachment. That's the best way to get in it. It is user-friendly, but it has some checks and balances in it.
One thing I will tell you is we will have a policy statement very shortly on how we're going to approach this. Okay? We're going to have a policy statement. We're going to make these corrections. And Roy's going to lead that group. Okay? We are going to have that problem. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Bob's wife. It's so nice of you to have me here. I've gone through the same thing with Daughters and many other nonprofits. And I find that there's a lot of interest in doing this and a desire, but the information on how to use it is not broken down into bite-sized morsels. For instance, there was a question about the email the other day, and there's a way to form an email list so that you can send to many people at one time, and they won't, everyone else won't see the emails, and you still get your information out. So I think that it'll be just some handy kind of step one, do this, step one, do that, would be really helpful. And right. Then, if you're like on Facebook, how do you upload your picture to Facebook? So there's a lot that can be happening right now, and I think that it's, people can be eased into this while you're working on your mega policies. So that's my comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Roy. We're going to have to stop. We're going to have to go on to our next speaker.